camera.
Nice.
Cool. Ready? Okay. All right. Jeremy Benning, DP, Canadian icon film guy, Canadian Society of Cinematography member, educator, leader. Welcome to RTV 600 at Seneca.
Thank you for having me.
This is the cinematography class.
Excellent.
They're a little rowdy because this is the last day of school.
Awesome.
So they're a little wired up. So they're back there. We're here. We'll have a little chat.
Sure.
All right. So you've been doing this business for a little bit. I remember you're known now for one particular show, The Expanse.
That's right.
In a little bit, in our second part of the interview, Kyle Francis is going to bombard you with technical questions.
Sure.
Let's talk about you. When did you develop a passion for this business?
Well, I guess it goes back to when I was like 11. I got into photography as a kid, and I sort of thought that I would go into photojournalism because my parents had National Geographic magazines, and I was inspired by that. And then as I got older, kind of into like early high school, I got a camera when I was around that age, like a stills camera, and learned everything I could about photography because this would have been like the late 80s, so it was no internet. It was going to the library, getting books, and it was a film camera. It was a Pentax K1000, and I just learned whatever I could about photography. And then I ended up going to an arts high school. Grew up in Mississauga, and it was an arts high school called Cawthra Park.
Okay.
And I was able to focus on arts there and photography. So I had the good fortune of spending like my entire high school years in a darkroom. So I really got to like learn like black and white print techniques and lighting and all that kind of stuff. But as I was doing that, I realized that actually I was really interested in cinematography because I got to go to a film set when I was around 12 because someone in the family was working in the business, and I got to witness a film set, and I kind of saw the photography thing that I was interested in, and then sort of that being expanded into like moving the camera and storytelling in a moving way. So I shifted my focus from photojournalism into cinematography. So when I was at high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I focused on that, and at the time everyone said, "Oh, if you want to do that, you should go to Ryerson." That was what everyone said. This is the school you should go to. So I did my 5 years at Cawthra and really focused as much as I could on photography, and then went into to film school at Ryerson. And while I was doing that, I was also working I kind of met people at the end of high school through different contacts that got me into music videos, and
cool.
I found a company that was making music videos, and I did. I started as a PA there, and knew that lighting was my main focus, so I got into the electric side of the crews and worked as an electric, and then became a best boy, and then a gaffer, and I worked my way up through the lighting department. So that's kind of how I got my start.
Okay, so you started on the ground level.
Yeah.
You were doing grip stuff. I saw you had quite a few productions. When did you make the step to camera, to cinematographer?
Well, I mean, I was doing it.
Like you're probably doing a little bit of it.
I was always doing it, but as far as like full-time professionally, I started, because there was a bit of a period where, sort of after I left film school, I was shooting, and I was shooting my classmates' projects, and I was doing indie music videos with this company, like really super small ones. But I also got into Steadicam around that time. And I actually didn't finish Ryerson. I was so kind of ingrained in that company that was making music videos and learning so much that I realized I'd gotten what I needed out of the first 2 years of that program. It was 4 years. And I decided, because I'd met someone, a new Steadicam operator at the time, who was looking for someone to kind of be like a protege, apprentice kind of thing. And I fell into that boat for him. So he said, listen, if you want to do this full time, like go and take the Steadicam workshop.
Yeah.
So I went to New York, and I basically took the money that was my like third year tuition, like I pulled out, and I put that into that Steadicam course, and I went there for a week. And that was kind of the beginning of like the next part of my career. So for the next 16 years, I did Steadicam. But I was shooting as well. I was doing commercials and small things, but Steadicam became sort of my thing, and I got known as being very good at it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, maybe around 10 or 12 years ago, I retired from that full time, and I did that for about 16 years or so. So I fully left that, and then became a DP full time.
Okay.
But I was doing it I was doing both.
Right.
But I kind of got to a point where I'm like, I have to, even though I love doing it, I realized that people were seeing me as just a Steadicam guy because I was known for that. And if I didn't stop doing it, that I wouldn't progress into shooting, and that was where my real passion was.
Right.
But I mean, I learned so much from doing Steadicam because I got to work with so many different directors and DPs from all over the place. So I absorbed all that knowledge as much as I could while I was doing it.
Cool. And your passion at the time, in terms of what type of cinematography you, at least from what I see from what you've done, is a lot of documentary.
That's right.
So what drew you to the documentary side? Especially as a Steadicam, because as a Steadicam operator, you're probably working on larger feature styles, and then to go to documentary, it's not a Steadicam regular kind of thing.
Yeah, not typically, but I actually brought that into that world with me. So I was known as the guy, if you were going to go somewhere remote and shoot something in a really remote place. I mean, this is the era before gimbals and movies and all that kind of stuff. So the only way to move a camera smoothly at that point in time was with a Steadicam. So I would often get brought in to do these kind of larger scale doc series because I could go to some remote part of the world and bring the Steadicam and do cool moving shots in places that you couldn't bring a dolly or no other stabilizing technology existed at that point. So I got known as someone who could I could work on the really small and I could work on the really big.
Right.
And I think for me that process. Also, I really enjoyed the kind of like street photography nature of it because that's always been something I've been interested in. So documentary work combined with Steadicam and DPing brought all those things together for me. And I mean, even to this day, all those things I learned from doing that, I use in the work I do now.
Yeah. And is documentary still a passion? I guess you're doing a number of things.
It is. I mean, now, my full-time work that pays the bills is, episodic television and commercials and features, but I still work on docs, and I still, I try and take breaks between the episodic long-format work because it's long, like many months of commitment.
Right.
It's pretty grueling, so I try and take a few months off between these things, and in that period of time, I work on our own personal docs. So I try and find stories that, my partner and I and our circle of filmmaker friends are interested in, and we make our own docs in the kind of interim. So they're kind of our own personal things, but they've had successes, and I think it's good to keep your fingers in both of those worlds.
Yeah, that's a good point about having that little group of people that you work with. That's one of the things we try to tell our students is look around you. These people here, like, network and connect with them. Network and connect with alumni that are ahead of you, and make little groups, make little teams. You're not going to work on every project together, but you can go and you can do things. I know as a shooter, one of the fears was getting into like a long contract of 8 months because then you come out the other side and you're like, hey, is anybody out there? Hello, remember me? I was your regular shooter.
That's right.
Do you find with what you're doing, you're able to compensate or to keep yourself busy when you come out of 8 months of The Expanse?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, on one side, I actually don't want to be busy when I come out of 8 months of a show because the last thing I want to see is a film set at that point.
Right.
I'm so tired of it and burned out from it that I really don't want anything to do with film at that point. But there is the flip side of like eventually I'm going to want to do other stuff. So I do make a point of reaching out to. I mean, my agent helps with this too, but I have to do it as well. I make a point of reaching out to all my contacts, the people that I've known for years in commercials and other formats. And I say, hey, I'm finished with the show, like, let's go for lunch or whatever. I make a point of doing that because people forget that you are out there. And they just think when they associate you with a certain project that is of a certain scale and ongoing, they think, well, that's all he does now.
Right.
So you have to remind people that you're around because it's not my whole life. And I know that at some point I'm going to do something else after that.
Sure.
I don't want people to forget about me. So you do have to make a point of reminding people that, hey, I'm here, and it's, and I have, usually takes me a few weeks or a month or so after I finish something like that to recover and also build up that momentum of going back to the things I did before, whether it's commercials or smaller projects, which for me usually is the right amount of time. But it does take time to kind of remind people that you're there, and also they start working with other people, so you kind of fall out of that cycle. So you have to kind of work your way back in, and then plus they're like, well, you're only going to be available for a few months, and you're going to go back to that thing again.
Right.
So how much do they want to invest time with you? So you got to find that balance.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So speaking of going forward in the future, what else do you still want to do?
Well, I'd like to do. I mean, I've been doing episodic television for like 5 years now, which is great. But I would like to do more features. I haven't done a feature since 2014. So I'd like to do, because features are more of a concentrated, smaller time frame. It's not 7 months. It's like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And you're also making like an hour and a half thing versus like 10 hours of something.
Right.
So it's a different mode of storytelling. You have a bit more time to tell that one story over that shorter period of time. So as far as screen time goes. So I'd like to do more of that, and I'm actively seeking features and things like that. And I have a particular interest in, true stories, historical things, biopics, and that. And I've done a bunch of that kind of thing, partly from my doc work, and I to me that's what resonates with me a lot. So I put the word out through my contacts that this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do in the next 5 years or whatever that is.
Okay, so that fits into your style in terms and your progression of what you want to do. But when The Expanse came along 5 years ago, you weren't the typical person for that job.
No.
Yeah. But they called you up anyway, and how'd that go? So how did that happen?
Well, so at that point I had never done episodic television, and I'd actually I not so much avoided it, but I wasn't pursuing it because I had tasted it a bit in the early 2000s doing Steadicam. So I did a lot of daily work and stints on episodic TV, and it was cool as an operator, but from a DP perspective, I'm like, this isn't really, I don't really enjoy this. Like I enjoyed the experience of being an operator there, but I didn't see it as something as a DP I wanted to pursue it. So I never pursued it.
Right.
It wasn't until sort of like the House of Cards kind of era started with Netflix and seeing these amazing shows and thinking, oh, this is like a different kind of television. This is not the TV that I remember working on like 10 years ago.
Right.
It'd be great to do something like that, but really not thinking how or what. But around that same time, by serendipity or whatever, I got a phone call from this producer that I didn't know, a guy from Toronto named Manny Danilon, and he had gotten my name from the guys at Sim Digital, who the two owners of the company, who I had a good relationship with, and I guess they were looking for someone for this show. Manny had been tasked to produce the show in Toronto, The Expanse, and they were looking for someone that they didn't know who was the right fit, and I guess all the usual suspects were not the right fit for the show, and Manny had lunch with these guys at Sim, and they gave them, gave him my name. They're like, he's the person you're looking for. He ticks all the boxes of what you're describing. So when Manny called me out of the blue, I didn't know him, but he gave me the pitch of like, this is the show, this is kind of what it is. And of course, immediately I was like, wow, that's amazing. It's totally something I'd be interested in. But I thought, well, I'm never going to get this because it's huge and I don't have the credits. But they were telling me on the phone, we want someone who's not from episodic television. We're looking for someone not from that world, who has your kind of background. So, come in for an interview. So and I thought, well, that's great, but I know that what's going to happen is someone's going to say, we looked at your resume, it's awesome, but you've never done episodic television.
Right.
And of course, I went into that interview for like an hour and a half. There was like 5 people in the room, and one of the American producers asked that question. Or look at your resume, you don't have episodic television here. And I said, well, the directing producer, who was the guy who started the series, who I didn't know, he was from the UK, he really liked the fact that I'd done doc work. He looked at my work, and he liked the balance of both, because they wanted that sensibility in the show. And he really said, well, I really like what your doc work, and he kind of was trying to override that producer. And it was really thanks to him that he pushed, because no one else knew who I was in that room, and even he didn't. But he liked what I had done, and all my music videos and commercials and documentaries, all those things combined made me the right person for that job. So he pushed, and that's how it happened.
Oh.
Yeah.
And just carried on from there. Yeah, it was such an interesting thing, just because they wanted that style, though. But they in a way, from how it was being said, they wanted your style.
They did, but they
didn't.
Yeah, but there was always that kind of like, someone's going to ask the question, like, but he doesn't have the experience to do it. Right. So, and every so often, you get that break where there's one person who believes in you, who says like, yeah, that's fine, but look at all this stuff. Like, this person's the right fit. Yeah. And that was that moment for me.
So when you came on board, did you feel you had to sort of earn your stripes all the way along? Were you kind of fighting to get your vision onto episodic television?
Yeah, I mean, but I was very much in tune with what that director wanted, and the production designer, creatively, everyone who was behind that show, I felt like we were totally in sync. So I was pushing for the things that I knew that they wanted, as far as how to approach the show, how to light it. We're dealing with, spaceship sets and asteroid colonies and things that are complete, full 360 build environments where there's a floor, ceiling, walls, everything. How do you light that in a way where you can see everything? So my pitch was like, we have to light this practically. We have to build everything into the sets. It has to be LED, color changing, all that stuff. And of course, that's a huge expense for the production, because they have to buy most of that stuff. You can't, it's not renting lights that you hang in the ceiling for 7 months. It's like you're buying hundreds of, thousands of dollars worth of ribbon and cutting it up and soldering it and sticking it in places. Yeah. And that was a big commitment for the production, but I pitched that really hard, and everyone supported that idea, even Manny, the producer. But he had to go to the studio and say, we need to spend this much money on a show that we don't even know there's going to be more than one season. Right. But we won that argument, and that was that made my way of doing it, the vision of it,
Yeah.
doable because everyone knew that was the only way to really do this.
Yeah.
There was no other way to, how do you light these sets any other way?
Yeah.
And that's really been the mode of how we work ever since.
Cool. Okay, we're stepping on Kyle's toes here by talking about The Expanse. I told him I told him I wouldn't do that, but okay. So
But it's directly related to that.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
yeah, indeed. Okay, so let's just talk about this room full of people over here. It's their last class. They're hoping to go find a job. Can you give them a little advice? Now, when did you go to Ryerson? What year was that?
It would have been, I would have left there around 93, 94.
Okay, all right.
Something like that.
Okay, so we're similar spots in terms of our career things, or our ages anyway.
That's right.
You do more interesting stuff, although that's debatable. Do you have some advice for these fine people here that are thinking, now what do I want to do?
Find some interest. And if you want to shoot, from my experiences, I can only speak to working as a cinematographer, but for me it was getting on set and starting at the bottom and learning every job. And for me, from my personal take on it, was learning how to light was the most important thing, because I know that, because some people go the camera route and they become camera assistants, but that process can take longer because you end up as an assistant for a long time. For me, I thought, well, if I want to light, I need to know how lighting works. I need to work in a lighting crew. So if that's the interest of people in this class, then I would say get onto a set, get into a lighting crew, start as a PA. I mean, that's what I did. And make your own things all the time. Don't stop making your own projects. So while you're doing the paid gigs that pay your bills, always try and make your own projects all the time. And as you say, network with the people that you went to school with, because I still keep in contact with people that I went to school with.
Right.
And the people that, not just people I went to school with, but people I met who were starting out at the same time as I was in on the sets that I was working on, like other PAs who were in my same situation. We all kind of banded together, and those are the same people that I now are my circle of peers, and we've grown together. So you establish that now. This is the time to do it. Get onto those sets, volunteer, make your own stuff, and just keep doing it. And it snowballs. It just keeps growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So network, and just keep doing stuff.
Keep doing it, and the other thing is even as I was getting more paid gigs, I would find that the indie sort of art projects, like I would do dance films and music videos, and it really stuff I could try interesting techniques with. I'd put that stuff on my reel, and when a major advertiser or bigger client sees that stuff, they'll often mention like, oh, that dance film that you really like that, and it's not the Coke commercial or the McDonald's thing or whatever. Like they say, okay, yeah, you can do that stuff, but that's the stuff that they gravitate towards, and I think even more so now with like Vimeo and people making all kinds of things, you see advertising agencies referencing like these viral videos that are really cool, not the big necessarily like commercial projects. So for me, doing those little indie art things, I've always tried to keep doing those and keep involved with them, because not only do you learn from them and you push your boundaries artistically, but people also like they'll recognize them and they'll be like, hey, your reel's great. I love that dance film. Like the thing I did for no money, that was like the little passion project for a friend. Yeah. Those things often get you attention, and they often will lead to the bigger thing. And Expanse was certainly an example of that, because all years of doing all those little things is what made me different from everybody else.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Jeremy, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
Now Kyle's going to drill you with technical questions for 4 hours.